Hey everybody, it's Lou, and we've got a follow-up video to the microwave kiln video. There seems to have been some interest in having a conversation, or at least a tutorial about how I go through and make my jewelry in a microwave kiln, and this is the follow-up video to that. What I'm going to try to do today in this video is talk about safety, pretty important stuff. These are things that you'll probably want to do before you fire up your kiln for the first time. And then go through the actual process of cutting some glass, putting it together, and then fusing it in the kiln. We'll kind of stop there, looking at the glass as it comes out of the kiln, and then pick up in the next series and discuss how we go about preparing the glass to be made into jewelry, and attaching the bail and all of that stuff. So let's get started first with the safety items. Number one, some eye protection. You're going to be fusing glass in a kiln. There is the potential it could crack. You'll be peeking at it while it's actually under a heat in the actual microwave. So you want eye protection. And if you have just glasses, you want something to go on the side to protect the sides of your face in the event that something breaks. I've been doing this for about 7 years now, and I've had glass shatter, but I've never had anything hit me in the eye or the face. Doesn't mean you don't protect for that. So if you wear glasses, get some side shields. If you don't, or you wear contacts, get some safety glasses, some nice ones that wrap around your face. The other thing that I'll suggest that you get immediately is, since you're going to be cutting what potentially are fairly small pieces of glass, especially if you used acrylic glass, you want to get something called running pliers. This is a set of those. They're interesting. There's a top and a bottom. The top has a mark in the middle of it, and it's probably not easy to see, but it's in a curved shape. So you line up this with the cut that you make with your glass cutting knife, and then gently squeeze it, and it'll press down on either side of that cut and snap the glass. Now, the reason why I recommend these, I used to snap them by hand, and you can't see it, but there's a fairly nice half-inch scar right there where I cut myself pretty badly. Probably should have gone to the doctor to get glued together, but I didn't, and I want you guys to avoid that. So these pliers are inexpensive. At the end of this video, you'll have a series of links to products that I've used over the years and find useful. These are in there. Just so you know, I am paid for those links. It doesn't change the price that you pay, but it does give a small amount of money back to me. And I'm a volunteer STEM teacher in the local schools and high schools. And I use that, whatever money I make from the videos, to fund that operation. You see some videos, other videos on the channel talking about the things that I'm making and producing elsewhere. So the last thing I want to talk about is if you've got a kit, and that's how I started. In fact, that's where I got these from. These are cotton Nomex. I don't know what they're made out of. But whatever it is, it's not good enough. Ask me how I know. Burnt myself pretty badly using these. They're good for about 5 to 10 seconds of holding the kiln when it's hot coming out of the microwave. These things get very hot enough to melt glass inside, and I've seen 300-400 degrees Fahrenheit on the outside. So you're going to want to throw these away. Don't even use them. Go to the links. And what I have are Blue Fire gloves. Absolutely amazing. You don't feel anything. I've used these for about 6 years now. Never burnt myself. I think one of the advertisements they have in the page is that you can grab a burning log in a fire. And you can. I've done that. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think that's really how they intend for you to use them. But these protect you very well so that you can go into your kiln, take your hot kiln out, or as you'll see when we go to create our actual first piece of jewelry, you're going to want to peek at the kiln, tilt it up just a little bit so you can see inside and find out what state your glass is in. You do that very quickly, but it's still, the kiln is quite hot and you're going to need these to do it. So that's the safety lecture. We won't talk about that anymore. Let's see here. I had one other thing, and I don't know where I put it, but I do have a little fire extinguisher. It's around here somewhere. It's about this big. You can buy them. It's not a full-size one that you kind of pull the pin, but it's a little spray bottle of fire extinguisher. The kiln is very hot. If you drop it, it's going to shatter, and you're going to probably want something just in case you start a fire somewhere to be able to put that out. I used to do this in the garage with a concrete floor. I'm doing it now in a dedicated room that has a wooden floor, so I definitely keep a fire extinguisher nearby. Luckily, I haven't had any issues with that. So let's get started. Let's talk about your first microwave kiln piece of jewelry and what it's going to entail to make that happen. Okay, so here we are at the table where I cut my glass. Now, probably the first thing we should talk about is the type of glass that you'll be using. There are two main types, 90 COE and 96 COE. I've always focused on 90 COE because that's where I can get the greatest variety of glass. You'll see this where it's advertised. If you use my links, it's all 90 COE, but you'll see 90 COE on the actual label for the glass. What that means is the glass that you have will expand and contract at the same rate, especially if you're combining different glasses, which you do with the fused glass microwave jewelry. You're going to want the same coefficient of expansion for that glass. 90 is what I've used, like I said, because I can get the most variety. What I'm going to do here is I just like to use a straight edge ruler with a little bit of cork on the back of it to guide me if I want to make a perfectly straight cut. In this case, I do. And then I have my glass cutter. It's a good version, kind of an upgrade from what you get in the kits. What you get in the kit will work. I used that for about a year, and then I got one of these. One of the things I will note is a lot of these glass cutters come with the ability to add oil to lubricate while it cuts. I think that's for more large panes of glass and maybe stained glass artisans. I've never used oil, never had to use oil. It cuts just fine. I've never had any issues with this wearing out prematurely. I think in 7 years I've actually used one of these cutting heads and had to buy another one. But this is a good cutter. I've used this one and really like it. It fits my hand well, so that works out well for me. But we're going to score the glass. You want to press down firmly, not terribly hard. I'm using a piece of plywood, really thin plywood to cut on. I've tried the glass cutting mats, but the pieces of glass that we cut are so small that those little 1/4 inch squares that those glass cutting mats have, I tend to have those pieces of glass fall down in there or not cut properly. So I just use a piece of plywood. It works good, good hard thing to press on, and press down with your cutter. That scratching noise is what you want to hear. Sounds like you're scratching glass with a diamond. It's a carbide wheel, and what you end up is a nice clean line. Now this may or may not snap cleanly. I've had it break halfway down, and don't worry about that. That's why it's an art, not a science. I don't let that stress me out too much. But running pliers, like I said, I used to hold these and snap them with my fingers. That's how I got this wonderful cut, and don't do that anymore. So I got my running pliers, glass pliers, whatever you want to call them. And just snap that right off. No risk to me. Now what I like to create, and most of these are partial melts, kind of a full melt Came out a little weird. I don't like that one so much. But 2 layers. So I'll have a base layer and then a layer, typically dichroic, on top of that. I do use stained glass sometimes for a base layer. I bought this stained glass off of eBay. This is stuff that falls on the floor in stained glass shops, and they can't really do anything with it. It's too small, but they'll sell it by the pound on eBay. I don't really have any links because eBay comes and goes so quickly. I can't put any links on there, but just Google 90 COE glass in eBay, and you'll come up with tons of it. They literally sell it by the pound. I get it in huge boxes. I bought 5 pounds 7 years ago, and I'm still not even a third of the way through it. But it is pretty. Makes nice jewelry. Then we're going to take this and just cut it once more so it's small enough to fit in a kiln, about the size I like. Snap that. And then what I like to do, first of all, clean up after myself. So I'll take a little paintbrush and move all of these little tiny cut pieces of glass off to the side. And then later on, depending on what kind of mood I'm in, I'll put them in my trash. I keep a little trash bucket, or I keep a small container, and I'll just sweep them into the container. And you can do some interesting stuff with the scraps. But this stuff is sharp. It'll get in your hand. Ask me how I know. And it's really irritating. So I clean up after every cut and snap. Now I have a piece of dichroic glass here, kind of a bubble pattern. And one side actually has the metal that's deposited. And the other side, in this case, because it's clear, it has the clear backing. What I'm going to do is use the back side of this glass and have it face up. And then when I melt the 2 pieces of glass together, this will become what we call a cap, what I call a cap. This is kind of the other way around. The dichroic is on the bottom on this side, and then on top is a piece of glass. It actually happens to be a piece of dichroic too, and that forms the cap. I have in there clear glass that I use to do it as well. Works a variety of different ways. But what I'm going to do is cut out a little piece of dichroic glass to go on top here, and that will become both the cap for itself and kind of a pretty way to finish it off. So this piece I'm going to kind of cut freehand, and you can see I have an angle going here already. So I'm going to try and follow that angle as best I can. Like I said, art, not science. Dichroic glass, you almost always want to cut from the back of it, just because it'll tear up the front. And this is textured, and it's kind of hard to cut the textured side. So find out where your score line is, hard to see there, and just snap it. Now, when I first started, I would take these little pieces of glass and just sit it on there. And you can do that. In fact, for half a year, that's the way I did it. Until I saw somebody on YouTube introduce me to this stuff. Glastac gel. It's made by BullsEye. The same people that make the kiln papers that I put in the kiln. And it's basically just a little gel that you can put just a drop or so onto the glass. Doesn't take much. You're not trying to adhere it. You're just trying to keep it from moving around while you manipulate it and put it in the kiln. And that's it. That's all it really takes. What I'll typically do is, you can see here, I've staged several that I'm making right now. And I'll just let them sit for an hour or two until that Glastac gel dries. So what we're going to do is take this one that we just cut and set it aside to dry. You could probably do it this way. I don't like to put wet stuff in the kiln. I've had it crack before. and we'll use this one, which is kind of a variation on that same theme. It's that same bubble glass on top of a base, and it just so happens that this base is stained glass. This is just some marking that'll burn off in the kiln that they put on the stained glass. But we're going to use this, and you can see I can move it around and the glass doesn't move. This just burns off in the kiln, so it's not an issue in terms of what's on the glass. When I first started making fused glass, I did this in a typical ceramics studio, and they had us use white glue. And unfortunately, the white glue, if you use even more than just the teeniest amount, will blur and smudge the actual outcome. This stuff leaves no residue. You don't even see it. This little, 4-ounce container, you can see I've got about a quarter of it left. That's 7 years worth. So you'll buy one of these and you don't really use much at all. You just need it to stay together long enough to get it in the kiln and make sure it doesn't move around once it's in there. But now I think we're ready. We've got a piece of glass cut. We've got it fused with the Glastac, and we're ready to put it in the kiln and run it in the microwave. Okay, here we have my microwave kiln. You can see here's the base, has a little raised portion. I'm kind of unique in these kilns that are really porous. I actually kiln wash the bottom of my kiln. And I do that because if you don't, and if you don't use paper, this kiln paper from BullsEye, the bottom of your glass will leak into these tiny little holes, these little pores, and you get a really, really rough finish. All of these that I made recently, these are partial melts, I call them. I don't melt it all the way, just enough to fuse together. But they come out perfectly smooth. If you get a kiln kit, it'll probably have a file in it, like a diamond file. And that's so that you can file off the rough edges from a firing on your particular piece. I maybe have to file 1 out of every 20 of my pieces, and that's typically because some of the dichroic piece, the metal has come up through the top and didn't quite fuse with the bottom layer. Most of the time, the back of my pieces are extremely smooth and not sharp. This one's really smooth. This black one came out perfectly smooth. There's nothing there, although I'm not in love with the shape. The other thing that I do with all my kilns, and I would suggest that you do this as well, is get yourself just a couple of pieces of glass. This stuff is the cheapest. In fact, you could use 2 black pieces or a black and a white or a black and a clear piece, and figure out how long it takes for your kiln to fuse. I have it written on each one of my kilns. I have 3, and they're all 3 different ages. This is what power I run the microwave at. So most microwaves, you can set the power level anywhere from 1 to 10. So this is at power level 7, and this is for 7 minutes. And if I run it at these 2 levels, I should be able to get this glass hot enough to make a complete fuse. And when I say a complete fuse, it's when all of the edges are smooth, the top forms nicely with the bottom, and it becomes about 1/4 of an inch thick. That's the way these things want to work. If I were to keep going, this thin piece at the end would kind of shrink back in, and you'd have a perfectly round 1/4 inch blob, is what this 90 COE glass likes to do. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put this in here, go over to our microwave. I'll do probably 7 for 6.5 minutes. And then I can put in a second run in my particular microwave, and I'll do it power level 3 for about 3 minutes. And what that does is maintains whatever heat I achieve here. It'll keep that heat and not get any hotter. The big problem, the thing that most people screw up on microwave kilns, is they get them way too hot. I have shades on my windows, and I tend to keep the light fairly dim in this room because you want to be able to look into your microwave, and this is how you tell how hot it is. This hole at the top. This hole allows to vent gases and it allows the air to expand. But more importantly, it lets you see how hot the inside of the kiln is. And it should be a very, very light orange. If it gets to the point where it's bright orange, bright red, or oh my goodness, white, the problem you're going to have there is you've overfused. If you're lucky, the only thing you'll do is you can literally melt the metal in the dichroic and you lose all of the shininess, the reflection. That's a little bit of what happened here. This got a little bit too hot and it's not as reflective as, say, something like this, which is only partially melted and you can see has quite a bit of a reflection to it. So that's one thing that will happen. The other thing that can happen is it'll just literally destroy your kiln. They'll crumble. Research I've done, the stuff inside the kiln that actually gets hot is called silicon carbide, basically what's on sandpaper. And they glue it in there with something called water glass. Not sure if that's exactly how this is made, but it's a general idea. And it can only take so much heat at once. And you can tell just from looking at it, it gets quite hot. You want to keep that just to a warm orange glow and not go anything past that. So I want to get to the warm glow, which will be like the 6.5 minutes at 7, and then the 3 minutes at power level 3 is what will just kind of maintain that heat and allow this time to melt down and fuse. So let's go ahead and go to the microwave. Okay, here we are at the microwave kiln, or the microwave I use for the kiln. It's probably a better way to say it. A couple of things you'll notice. It's a typical microwave. I don't know who makes this one. Frigidaire is where I got this one. It's a 1,000 watt microwave. And I've been using this one for all 7 years. I'm unusual. I think some people are very paranoid about what they use, to hold their kiln. I use the tray that came with the microwave, and I leave the rotation wheels down there. So basically this thing is going to sit on that glass tray and rotate around in a circle. I've got a piece of kiln paper in there that I've already, in addition to the fact that I've already kiln washed the little base there. We'll talk about more of that in maybe the next 2 or 3 videos to talk about kiln preparation so that you can get a nice smooth result without having to resort to the diamond file too much. But this is the way I do it. I leave it just the way it came. I know people do all sorts of different things, but I've never had any issue with this, using this thing for 7 years now. The trick is I'm very careful about not getting it too hot. You want to be very, very sure that you don't run this thing white hot, because you can more than likely probably crack that bottom piece of glass, even as thick and as heavy as that is created. So let's go ahead and put the top on the kiln. Shut it. Oh, by the way, we talked about it before. This is my little fire extinguisher. It's very portable. I keep it really close by, just in case. Never used one yet, but better to have it and, than have it and not have it, or need it and not have it. So we'll put that there, and let's see, I think we're ready. So on mine, I'm going to hit, I hit stop and cancel first to clear it. And then I'm going to do cook time. I want to cancel that. Cook time 630. Power level 7. And then I can do a second cook time. Cook time 3000. Power level 3. And then you just hit start, and we'll come back when I'm ready to check the kiln. Okay, now we're going to open the kiln up after that first 6.5 minutes. You can see a nice orange glow. You're going to keep your fingers away from that. It's very dangerous. And what you're going to do is grab the top of the kiln and lean it back just a little bit so you can peer underneath. Now when I peered underneath there, I doubt you could see that on the actual video, but it wasn't quite done. It's more like a partial fuse, and I want this to kind of blend together a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and start it back up, and we're going to run that last 3 minutes. Oops. 3 minutes. I'm going to change the power level to 4 since I sat here and yapped for so much, because the kiln cools off pretty quickly. And we're going to run 3 minutes at power level 4 to try and get that fuse to be a little bit more complete. I'll bring you back when we're ready. Okay, we finished that up. Take a quick peek here. That looks good. It's all formed a round corner. It's round edges. It's gotten to be to the point where it's about 1/4 inch thick. So I'm going to lift it out carefully and place it on the cooling station that I have on the top of the microwave. What I've got there is a 1/2 inch thick piece, maybe 3/8 inch thick piece of aluminum. You could use tile. I've used tile in the past. And we're just going to leave that sit there until it completely cools off. Whoops. I've got a thermal gauge here, and you can see it's about 370 degrees right now, and it'll cool off fairly quickly. I won't come back to this kiln and touch it until it's at room temperature. People that work with glass on a regular basis know that you have to temper it. You have to let it cool slowly. Anneal it, I think is the right word. And this is the version of that I do. That's as close as I can get to annealing. And I just let it cool slowly. It usually takes about, I don't know, maybe 3-4 hours inside the house. And once that's cool to the point where I can touch it and it's room temperature by the little thermometer, I'll take it out and take a look at it and see if there's any filing that needs to be done. And then it'll be ready to drill a 1 millimeter hole in and mount the pinch bales. So exciting stuff. I'll bring you back and we'll take a look at the results of our work here in a bit. I did end up stopping this about a minute early. Had enough heat in it, and once you get that rounded corner, you risk the burning off the dichroic piece. So I usually check it about every minute when I'm on that second run, if things seem to be going well. All right, thanks everybody. See you in a little bit. So the kiln is cooled down. I can see that it's about 73 degrees, the same temperature as the house. So I know what's in it's cool. Go ahead and open it up. That looks pretty good. So it came out pretty nice. The back is really smooth because of the prep that we did on the kiln and using the kiln paper. And it looks pretty nice. So from here, we do any filing if it needed it. I don't think this one is going to. And the next thing we do is drill a hole. I'd probably drill the hole up here. All right. So there is your first kiln piece of jewelry. Thanks.